All right, you asked for it, and this will probably be a multi-parter because there's a lot to unpack here. When it comes to alignments, originally, back in the early days of D&D, there was only one axis, and that was law versus chaos. Now, obviously, we now have good and evil added into the mix, and we're going to talk about that too, but I want to start with law and chaos. This is widely misunderstood. In fact, looking at the comment section in a couple of my previous videos, actually, I'm seeing comments that lead me to believe that there are some very, very different understandings of what law and chaos actually mean. So let's break this down real quick. So law versus chaos. Law, obviously, a lawful character is going to try to follow the law of the land, right? Obviously. But it goes beyond that. A lawful character is also going to try to respect the cultural norms in place. Even if they disagree with them, they're going to attempt to respect those. You've probably run into people who are like this, who say, oh man, yeah, I really hate that, but it's the law, so I'm going to march in lockstep along with it. I'm going to submit myself to it, even though I disagree with it until it can be changed. That right there is an example of a lawful person. And where the law can be all manner of good or evil, you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, but you're going to have characters to simply argue that you shouldn't break it because it's the law. At the same time, you may have cultural norms. And we all know throughout all of history and even across the world today, there are cultural norms that we would consider to be good and cultural norms we would consider to be evil. And amid this community, there's a lot of disagreement about good and evil there. That's why that's going to be a completely separate video. But at the same time, a lawful character is more likely to want to respect those cultural norms. If they walk up to an inn, for example, a private institution, and there's a sign on the door setting forth a rule for the establishment, this isn't a law that's going to be established or enforced with violence necessarily. It's just a request of a private property owner. A lawful character is going to let that carry some weight. They're going to want to respect that. Now, doesn't mean they're never going to violate it, but they're going to try to respect it for the most part. That's what lawful means. Okay, now we get to the one that really throws everybody, and that is chaos. Okay, chaos does not mean stupid. Chaos does not mean unpredictable necessarily, although that can be a component. Chaos does not mean it's someone who just does stuff just for doing stuff's sake, or just to burn the world down. No. Although yes, the anarchist absolutely is a chaotic character. Chaos can mean everything from somebody who really doesn't care about society's rules, or even maybe is a little irked that those rules exist in the first place. It's not necessarily an anarchist looking to set the world on fire, although that certainly falls within the pale as well. But it's someone who maybe they don't like the fact that you're trying to constrain them with a set of rules at all, even if they agree with them. So they might do something little just to kind of step outside the lines a little bit. Generally speaking, I would say a neutral character is the one who really just doesn't care whether there are rules or not. They're a little more practical about it, but you can have a chaotic character who's just walking around going, look, I care about the good and evil more than I care about the law versus chaos. I care about the good and evil more rather than about the law, rather. And so you can have characters walking around who are chaotic, who are not necessarily doing crazy things, but they're the kind of person who might see the sign and go, yeah, no, not doing that, and walk right by it without a second thought. It doesn't bother them at all. These are also the characters who might, well, let's give an example. So this doesn't necessarily mean an evil character. For example, a chaotic good character might be the one who participates enthusiastically in tax evasion on the theory that their money is better used being given to the poor, given to an orphan, a homeless person, or someone who needs dinner. It's not evil at all what they want to do. They're just irked by the fact that there is this law here and they don't like it, and they think their money is better used elsewhere. A lawful character there might be not happy about the fact that this confiscatory taxation is in place, that people are being robbed by this local noble. Okay, think Robin Hood, right? They might be opposed to that, but they'll begrudgingly pay the taxes that are due and do their best to earn or, rightfully loot treasure to do good with outside of that. Now, this is really, really complex, so I don't mean to say that this is the only thing that this is. This example is held up as the only one. And I'm going to try to avoid using fictional characters here because those are fun conversations to have, but at the same time, I think it might muddy my point a little bit, even though I just mentioned Robin Hood a little bit. Because Robin Hood, I'll go ahead and talk about this one for a second. Robin Hood, a lot of people will automatically say, oh, Robin Hood is a perfect example of chaotic good. No, actually. Robin Hood is actually lawful good. What do you mean? His nemesis is the Sheriff of Nottingham. He goes up against, Prince John. No. He's lawful good. His allegiance is to King Richard. He doesn't go against Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham because they are the scions of law and they're law enforcement, so to speak, and so he's going up against them and it irks him that there's this law. No. His allegiance is to King Richard, the rightful king. He's a lawful character. Okay, fight me in the comments. I know that's going to happen. But and I love Robin Hood. But as a character, that's one of those interesting conversations that you can have. So when it comes to law versus chaos, you can be, well, those are examples of good. Let's talk about examples of evil as it comes to law. Okay, Sheriff of Nottingham. You can have characters who use the law for evil. They follow the law. And here's an example of how their lawfulness might overcome their evil. They may refrain from killing a good member of the party when it is in their power to do so because it is against the law. It's against the law to do this. Now, that said, they will probably use their spies to identify when the party inevitably kills someone, say in self-defense. Say they're traveling along the road, they're set on by bandits, and they kill some of the bandits. Well, this is a case where, yes, you could absolutely say a lawful evil character, making sure that the good characters who are simply killing in self-defense are brought up on charges of murder. They're using the law against the good guys. They're using the law for evil. So, that's law versus chaos. I think I covered everything major I wanted to say about it. It's an interesting one, and again, it used to be the only consideration when it comes to alignment. Now, obviously, we have good and evil as well, which that is a much more complicated one, and it's one that is tricky. And there is a legitimate argument to be made for saying there should not be good versus evil in alignment. It should just be law versus chaos. Because as I've demonstrated, you can have good characters who are on both sides of that, all along the spectrum, and you can have evil characters all along that spectrum. And it's really interesting to watch how that plays out. But at the same time, I think it's very legitimate to say that this is definitely something that should be there. Whether you want good and evil added to it or not, we'll talk about that in a future video really soon. But I think when it comes to law versus chaos, I saw some very different explanations in the comments of the previous couple of videos. So I'm interested to see what you think about it, by all means, but that is my understanding of law versus chaos. And yes, when you go into the planar regions, you go to the plane of law, you go to certain chaotic planes, it can become a lot more relevant, a lot more important. But I happen to think that even when you're not doing that, it's perfectly legitimate to have conversations about it. Is your character more lawful, or are they more chaotic? And you can have an evolution or a character arc over the course of the campaign where maybe they become more chaotic, or they become more lawful, or at least they maybe sink towards neutral a little bit more and become a little more pragmatic about it. So those are my thoughts. That is law versus chaos. Next time I'm going to be doing good versus evil, and oh my word, that's a big one. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.